Hi there, and welcome back to the Farm RPG podcast. I am your host, Bhelogan. This week, we kick off with a player spotlight with Ambrolen, also known as Jax, on the Fake Gamer Bro podcast. After that, we have a mechanics deep dive with coderanger, digging into the Vineyard and Wine. I'll note quickly, this was recorded before the option was added to remove wine from the wine cellar. So there will be some corrections or some updates potentially from that I'll talk about in one of my YouTube videos later on, but it's not in this segment. After that, Auggie and I interview NoVelcroShoes from Down Under in his staff spotlight. And I had a special interview this week with sLinGeR that I wanted to get in, a very new player. He'd only been playing the game for 2 or 3 days at the time of his interview. So I snuck that in to get it in sooner. I think we've had enough players express interest wanting to be on the podcast. We may be doing 2 of these regularly in episodes coming up. We'll see how it goes. I'll also note that interview was done while traveling, so I didn't have my usual setup and only had Zoom from audio. You'll hear a bit of a difference, but hopefully it works out all right. All right, let's enjoy. Today I'm interviewing a player who reached out to me to ask to be on the show, who also has their own podcast they run. I'd like to welcome Ambrolen to the Farm RPG podcast.
Hi, yeah, it's very exciting to be here. I play Farm RPG all the time. It's one of my big mobile games that I talk about on Fake Gamer Bro, which is my mobile game podcast. I had to do a whole episode just about it because I just kept talking about it in all the other episodes. So it's a lot of fun and takes over my life.
It's become a little bit of an obsession, apparently.
Yes.
Now, listening to the start of your podcast, I caught that Fake Gamer Bro is kind of making fun of people who primarily play mobile games as if they aren't real gamers.
Yeah, because like that's the impression is like, oh, you play Candy Crush on your phone, you're not a gamer. But like there are so many cool mobile games, and I just kind of like start out like kind of tongue in cheek about it. And yeah, I want more people to know about mobile games. There's not as much information or talking about them, and there's so many cool mobile games out there.
Now, do you primarily play Farm RPG then on mobile, or do you also play on the PC, or do you do the split task?
I mostly do on mobile. I just prefer most of the tasks on mobile. Sometimes I'll have it up on like while I'm working. If I'm farming something that takes like an hour, I'll have it up on another screen while I'm working and just like, harvest and plant everything again. But yeah, usually it's on my phone.
It was worse when we had the manual crafting 1 by 1, but oftentimes I'll have it on my PC and clicking craft or explore and on my phone.
Yeah.
Doing the other part. Or if I'm just exploring on my phone, I'll be crafting and selling off the excess stuff as we go.
Yeah. That definitely makes sense. My tasks tend to be as I'm doing Farm RPG while watching a YouTube video while doing something else. So it's I'm multitasking with other stuff. But yeah, the manual 1 by 1 crafting was quite a lot. It's that's one of the things that I talk about on the episode that's coming out soon, or will be out by the time this is released, is how much the game improves. Like if you have any problem with a game, come back in like a week or a month and see if it's different now, because Farm RPG is always taking like feedback and making everything better.
All right, awesome. Well, when you do get that posted, let us know. We'll make sure to make sure the community is aware of it as well. Well, let's dig a dark questionnaire a little bit. How did you come up with your Farm RPG username?
So my Farm RPG username is actually just a username I used for like everything. Been using it since like middle school, high school. It's from a story I was writing, going to be my masterpiece. Obviously, it didn't really go anywhere, but I kept the name Ambrolen because it's basically nowhere else on the internet. And my old one, Samgam, was used a lot in a lot of different places, but Ambrolen, almost no one has it. So it's just easy for me to remember and keep track of and just have the same name across the board.
I enjoy that same privilege. I don't think I've maybe once ran into my username being taken, and half the time it's because I forgot that I'd registered somewhere with it already. Well, some of our users probably know I'm not great at reading quests, and I'm not great at reading my notes either. I'm jumping out of order here on my questions, but that's all right. How did you learn about Farm RPG in the first place?
So I first learned about Farm RPG from, I listened to The Besties, which is a video game podcast, and Griffin McElroy mentioned that he was playing Farm RPG, which was this like idle game mixed with like a farm spreadsheet or something like that. And I'm I'm like, oh, that's exactly my alley. I love idle games. I love like spreadsheet type games. I like to see the numbers go up. So I started playing it then, and especially, they mentioned it in a few more episodes on there. And I've been hooked ever since.
That's cool to hear about it from another podcast. I mostly know Griffin from the Adventure Zone podcast. Well, you alluded to how Griffin described the game. How would you describe Farm RPG in one sentence?
This is pretty hard because Griffin did a pretty good job, but I guess I'd say like a fun idle game with actual fun quests and mini games. Like I really like the fishing mini game.
I was going to ask you. I'm assuming you're not counting fishing as a mini game.
It's like,
but apparently you are.
I mean, it's not my favorite thing in the world, but I was surprised how much I enjoyed it compared to, all the other fishing games I've tried, and like other idle games or, like console games and everything else. It's not terrible. It could be better. It's still a fishing mini game, but not terrible.
So you've mentioned that you do a lot of reviews and talk about mobile games on your podcast. What other games do you like to play? If you were to give us a list of your top 5, say.
Oh God, top 5 games is so hard. Last time I checked the games I just currently have installed on my phone, not even all the games I've played. I currently have like 74, I think was my last count. So I definitely play a lot. Idle games are a huge thing for me because they're just easy to have on and not have to super pay attention. But I guess if I had to choose some top games, Magic Survival. Oh my gosh. It's currently only on Android, but it should be coming to iOS soon, hopefully. If you guys like, I know there's been a big boom around Vampire Survivors, which is a browser and Steam game. If you guys like that, you have got to try out Magic Survival. It is the same sort of format, bullet hell and trying to survive as long as you can, except it's kind of like a post-apocalyptic magic thing. It's a lot of fun. If you like Vampire Survivors, check out Magic Survival. There's also Death Palette is a really fun game that is horror, but not in like a jump scare way, but more like an aesthetic way. And it just had some neat puzzles that like challenged you, but didn't like, take too long to figure out. Mystic Messenger. You have got to talk about Mystic Messenger. If you like dating boy games, you have Mystic Messenger is a must. It's classic. Lifeline is a really neat game where you kind of get updates in real time, like you're helping an astronaut like figure out what to do because like their ship is crashed or whatever, and they can only message you for some reason, and so they're like, hey, should I go like to the left or the right? And you say 1, and they're like, cool, I'm gonna check it out. It'll take me a bit, and then like 30 minutes later you'll get a notification saying that they're ready to move on. They went to the direction you said, and stuff happened, and what now? Or they're like, go to sleep. So like 8 hours later, you'll get another message saying, okay, I'm up. What should I do? So it's neat that it involves real time without actually making you have to be in there and do stuff like immediately. It's just, I don't know. I like how it goes. It's kind of the same with Mystic Messenger, where it's real time. The Mystic Messenger, you do need to get in there a little bit more quickly. Alter Ego is like a mix of a lot of games I like. Like it's an idle game, but it has a story, and it also has personality quizzes. And like, what more do I need from a game? Like, I love all of those things. So it's just, it's really neat. Like it takes you through, like it uses a lot of like philosophical books and phrases from that. And then like, it's a whole like, kind of like Jungian and Freudian type of like ideas of the brain and like kind of which side so there's like multiple endings. There's 3 different endings, I think. And it's a lot of fun. I like idle games that have like an end, and it's a really neat game.
As soon as you said Alter Ego, I'm like, oh, I know that one. I'm like, oh, no, wait, I'm thinking of something else. I'm thinking of the AI singing VST instrument I used for the Golden Fish song instead. I think the mobile game's probably funner than that song, but we can blame Auggie for that one. If we were to ask you about games you like that aren't mobile games, what would come to mind?
Okay, for non-mobile games, it's pretty much Dragon Age and Pokemon. Like, I play other games, but those are the ones I come back to. Like, my Steam list, like, I buy a lot of Humble Bundles, so like I have so many games, and I'm like, should I play one of these new games I bought? No, I'm gonna replay Dragon Age Origins again, or Dragon Age 2 is one that's really quick to go through. And you know, I've been playing Pokemon Legends Arceus just nonstop since it came out. I pretty much go back and forth between those two franchises and try to play some other games, but really RPGs is where it's at for me.
A lot of us have that go-to game that we just launch up. It's like comfort food. So next, what is one thing that you wish the farm RPG community knew?
You know, I was thinking about this question about like, oh, well, maybe there's similar games that they'd like to play. Like, if you like farm RPG, you should know about blah, 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 blah. But honestly, I feel like farm RPG is currently like at, I guess, like the pinnacle of what I want from this type of game. And so I guess I just want them to know it's like the sort of community we have here and the amount that the developer like actually listens to people and like changes things pretty quickly and is always looking for quality of life stuff and just having just a really great community and experience. Like, that's not something you get everywhere. Like, this is a really rare thing. So like, do not take it for granted, because it's hard to find communities like this. It's really, really great.
That's an awesome answer. I like that a lot. The interaction we get with the developer with Firestream and the community is something that I know the staff works really hard to maintain and keep. It's hard to find that. You don't find that many places. All right. We may have dug into your answer a little bit, maybe not, but can you tell us an interesting fact about yourself?
Yeah, an interesting fact about myself, I guess, that would be that I have a podcast about mobile games. I always have to have a podcast. I always have to be doing some creative stuff. I have like you know, some other stuff going on. I like to get into a little bit of game dev, mostly like interactive fiction stuff. I just always have to be doing something, and podcasting is a lot of fun. I like to hear myself talk.
Awesome. So since you have your own podcast, I know you're probably even more experienced than I am at this. So let's turn the tables a little bit, and I'm going to let you ask me anything that you'd like to know, because I just assume everybody must know who I am, because like I've been here forever, but that may not be the case.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to ask you some questions. Like you say you've been here forever, so you've been here since the launch of Farm RPG?
Even before that, before the launch. Yeah, so Farm RPG initially started off as something called the settlements content for Titan Conquest. And the base of it was that you'd have your own settlement where you could go and build your farm and do some of these other tasks in Titan Conquest. And Firestream had been working on this for, 6 months a year. And then April-ish last year, he came and I'm staff on Titan Conquest and have been for a couple of years. So Firestream tends to come to his staff a lot of times saying, hey, check this thing out really quick. Well, around April-ish, he came and dropped the link for Farm RPG and said, settlements doesn't fit the theme for Titan Conquest. The rewards just don't fit the astronomical numbers that our endgame players here have. So I'm making it its own game. Come check it out. So that's kind of when we came over and started playing with it and breaking things, and before the actual public launch. So I started towards the end of April. So not the first player. I think it was in the 20th range that signed up. So that's where I came in on Farm RPG.
So since you've been a part of this for so long, did you have any hand in the direction Farm RPG ended up taking, or any input there?
That's an interesting question to answer. So, as staff, we do talk to Firestream and give suggestions and recommendations for things. So, for example, when we were looking at pigs, I ran by some mock-ups with some numbers of what I think they should be worth and gave that as feedback. Or oftentimes he'll test a feature and say, hey, can you check this out? And we'll give him his feedback and say this is broken or that isn't. Other things we've had hands in is changing the code of conduct. And some of the things that are in there is because initially they weren't. We didn't have a code of conduct other than just be nice kind of initially. But I have all kinds of things in there like no multiple accounts and no using any kind of automation, things like that. And a lot of things that were in the Titan Conquest code of conduct, but weren't initially in Farm RPG. And then, just kind of helping realize, we need this over here as well.
Yeah. Are you on any other sort of, is helping out with games like this a big part of your time, or you just got on Titan Quest and you got on this and it's just happens to be how it went.
So the other place I currently do moderation, I do in Titan Conquest still. I don't actively play that as much anymore. I'm mostly on Farm RPG, but I do some stuff on the back end for cheat detection and that. The other place I help out on staff a lot is the RPG Crossing website, which is a place for play-by-post games like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder and so forth. I'm a moderator there, and I also, for the last couple of years, and I'm working on playing on this year, run their annual player competition called Outplay. And Outplay is kind of like, it's like a reality TV show, single elimination bracket contest to find like the best player or the luckiest player every year. So it's kind of fun to figure out what's our story going to be this year. And the way it works is you have a week of game playing, and a play-by-post, it's usually pretty small or pretty slow. So you might only post once a week in a lot of games. But in Outplay, you're doing a player post or a DM or GM update every week. So you have a week of play, then a week of judging. And the judges go through and look what the characters did and see if they followed the rules and they liked the development that the characters had. And then they kind of pick the winners to who goes on. And that goes on for 4 weeks. And in your last round, your finale, whoever wins ends up getting a fancy badge for their profile. And that's always a lot of fun to do. And moderation there, you run into the same issues that you run on any kind of forum. You have a lot of spam bots and people that come on without the best intent from time to time, or dealing with people that really want to be there, but tend to rock the boat unintentionally and cause drama, intentionally or not, and trying to sort out those issues. But I do spend a lot of time moderating there as well. So that ends up being a big part of my hobby time. Is helping out with these games and sites that bring me a lot of joy and fulfillment.
Yeah, that's great. Moderating definitely takes a special someone, because you were talking about, the people who come in and they don't necessarily realize they're doing anything wrong, but it just like presses all the wrong buttons. And it's like, bro, you got to stop. And those are very hard people to handle, especially the bigger communities you get.
Yep.
The more people like that are there, where they're not like breaking rules, but they're like, come on.
or they're pushing boundaries. And in my family, I'm a father. I have 3 kids, and 2 of them have moderate to severe Asperger's, and so we've had all kinds of issues to deal with our kids. It makes me understanding. I don't think I've shared it on the podcast, but a really good example of it is my youngest actually got kicked out and suspended of kindergarten his very first day for peeing on the principal.
Oh man,
you can imagine that. So I've had my fair share of being on both sides of the problem child discussion. From it's my kid, how do I help him out?
Yeah.
To it's someone else's kid. We kind of understand what's going on, but there's still expectations of what's acceptable and what isn't.
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely gives you a better perspective on how all that goes. Yeah. That's really interesting. I definitely see how that helps you as a mod. Dang, I wish I could say, I got kicked out of kindergarten for peeing on the principal. I feel like that's going to be a bragging thing later on.
It may very well be. It's a fun story for the parents at this point. He's got 1 more year still before he graduates high school. So we're almost at the empty nester stage.
Oh man, yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, so you've been in these gaming communities for a while?
Yeah, really probably 2015, maybe a couple years before that is where I really was able to get back into gaming a lot. Apart from being a teenager, I got married pretty young, right after I turned 21 pretty much. My wife had a son from a previous relationship who I later adopted. He's our oldest. And so I spent a lot of years working full-time, going to school part-time, or the other way around. And so it took quite a while till, the family responsibilities are out of the way, and I really had time to sit down and do hobbies. And now I get to work from home. I work in sales, so I do remote demos since we can't travel with COVID, and it leaves me with ample time to enjoy my hobbies.
Oh yeah, that's great. I work from home too. I do basically data entry, some price entry for a grocery wholesaler. And working from home just makes it so much easier to have another screen or a tab open and just work on some other stuff, some hobby stuff, and take some notes while you're waiting for a phone call or whatever. It's definitely been a big help. It's very interesting to see how COVID has both positively and negatively affected people's hobbies and creative outlets.
Absolutely, it's had an impact on all of us one way or another.
Absolutely. What got you to start the podcast? It's pretty recent, right? I think that there was only a couple episodes out.
Yeah, we launched, as of the time of this recording, we launched just not quite a week ago with about 6 episodes, just recorded content. I've been doing videos for Farm RPG for a while. I have a group that tries to do a live play Dungeons and Dragons, Call of Cthulhu game. But we're all adults, and so our weekly scheduled recordings happen maybe once a month. I was just thinking there's something else I should do. And I've been a guest on the RPG Crossing podcast in the past, over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And it just hit me like, oh, I should do a podcast for review players on Farm RPG. I don't know if anyone would listen to that or be interested. So I asked the staff, and they all got really excited. I'm like, oh, okay, now I have to run with this. So that wasn't that long ago. From pitching the idea till we had content launch was maybe 3 weeks total. I'm kind of getting it together and get going. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a quick turnaround. Yeah. That's very exciting. I know that it's a trope where it's like, oh, yeah, you get someone alone in a room and they want to start a podcast. I'm like, I think everyone should start a podcast. It's fun. It's a fun creative exercise, if nothing else.
Absolutely. I've certainly learned a lot and getting better at this as I go along.
Yeah. It's great. I'm excited to have it in my rotation of things to listen to while I work.
All right, excellent. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and get this wrapped up. Thank you, Ambrolen, so much for reaching out to me and taking time to come and talk to us and letting the community get to know you better.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's a mechanics deep dive. I am your host, Bhelogan, here with coderanger.
Hi there.
Hey, coderanger. So in this segment, we're going to talk about the Vineyard and Wine. Now, this is a system that has been in the game for quite a while, but has seen a couple iterations of it come through, much like crafting and some other systems in the game. So with the two components, you have the vineyard where you grow grapes, and then the wine cellar where you potentially store wine. Why don't you give us a rundown of how these two systems work and how they work together?
Yeah, so the vineyard is similar to a lot of the other farm production buildings. So it is a farm building, you buy it, and then you get a certain number of grapes produced every day at server rollover. So at midnight server time, you get 5 grapes, 100 grapes, 1,000 grapes, 1,000,000 grapes, whatever you want. It's not like the orchard. There's no cap on the vineyard. A lot of people sort of assume that the vineyard works similarly because grapes are also a fruit, but totally unrelated. So you can have as many grape production points as you want, but they do get very expensive. So most people will eventually sort of settle down on however many they feel like producing at a given time. So you get however many grapes you want at rollover, and then you can craft them into either wine or into grape juice. So we'll talk maybe a little bit more about grape juice later, but mostly talking about wine. Ignoring that wine is used for a whole lot of quests, and a bunch have dropped recently that use wine, so that's been a good thing to have plenty of. But wine can be used in the wine cellar. It starts out being worth 1,000 silver. Not a whole lot, not very interesting. It takes 100 grapes to make 1 bottle of wine, which I think is probably in the real world actually a vast underestimate. But for game purposes, 100 grapes. And then
close enough estimation.
Yeah, good enough. The icon shows like a little bunch of grapes, so we'll assume it's actually quite a few. So you put it in the wine cellar and you let it age. And the older the bottle of wine gets, the more valuable it gets. So there's a couple of different perks that all interact with the wine cellar. To start with, you get 50 spaces in the wine cellar. I think it's 50 to start with, right? It's been a while since I had a perkless account to play with. So you can fit 50 bottles, and by default, they will max out at 8 million each. So they go from 1,000 to 8 million. There's a perk that raises the cap up to 10 million, and there's another perk that makes them go up in value faster, about 3 times faster. Well, it's not 3 times faster. The one of the values in the formula is multiplied by 3, but it's not actually the important term. So.
Yeah, it's the daily growth that's multiplied by 3, but it's not the initial value of 1,000 that gets multiplied into that. So that's why it kind of kicks in later, where you see that part of it growing.
Yeah, the exponential also doesn't. So the two formulas for the value are 1,000, the base value, plus if you don't have the perk, it's days in cellar cubed times farm level. And if you do have the perk, it's days in cellar cubed times farm level times 3. So the reason why it's not 3 times faster is because eventually that days in cellar cubed starts to dominate the math, since something cubed goes up a lot faster than something linear. So First question most people have, when's the best time to sell wine? And you'd naturally think that the answer is whenever it hits its max value, but it's usually not. So how long it takes to reach your max value will depend on your farm level. Almost always the correct answer is 1 day before it hits max value. So if you have the Cellar Insulation perk to make it go up in value faster, and you have the 10 million, what's the name of that perk? I don't remember. Fancy Bottles?
Cellar Insulation?
No, Cellar Insulation is the faster growing. I think Fancy Bottles is the 10 million cap instead of 8 million.
Right.
That'll take 33 days to hit max value. You want to sell it 32 days. So the problem is that we have this nice fancy curve that we talked about, the days in cellar cubed times farm level. The cap just sort of cuts that off wherever it hits. So it's not like 8 million and 10 million are not evenly on a day boundary of that equation. So the last day actually usually gets less growth than the day before, even though it's an exponential formula, because it's sort of getting cut early by the cap.
Right.
It's a relatively minor difference. So if you have all perks, the max value per day for wine is 90 million a day if you sell at 10 million. And if you sell at what I think is 9.7 million, if you sell at 32 days, you get 91 million per day instead of 90 million per day. So we're talking a pretty small increase, a couple percent. But if you are trying to be fully optimal, that is, and you have excess wine, if you're limited on how much wine you're producing, then definitely let them sit. But if you can replace it immediately, then 1 day before the end of the cycle.
A funny tidbit on that. In the last couple of days, Firestream jumped into staff chat and he asked, "Is it really better to sell wine the day before it hits max value?" Like, you should know. You coded it, and I think it was that responded. And the way he explained it was, yes, because your last day, the earnings is less than the average of the previous 31 days. So it's best to sell it and start on your next one.
And it's just that sort of that limiting cap cutting into that last day that ruins things. Also, for anyone that doesn't sit and chat all the time, is FFFF. Feel like we should clarify that since that's not probably obvious. He is a lovely and valued community member with an absolutely unpronounceable username. So that's sort of the basics. As for how to get wine, we talked about the Vineyard, but there is another source, and that's the level 6 or above snake, the green python pet. So a lot of folks will sort of early on be worried about how am I going to get enough grapes to keep my vineyard going, because you need at least 9 wine a day at max perks. I think it's two per day at minimum perks, 9 per day at maximum perks. And 900 grapes a day would actually cost quite a lot, but you're going to get most of that from the pet. So really, your vineyard, after you start getting level 6 pets, is only for extra wine or some extra grape juice on the side, although grape juice is also brought by one of the level 6 pets, so you don't end up needing a lot for that either.
So the two things that we can make then out of grapes then are, we talked about it briefly, the grape juice and the wine. Mm-hmm. And once you have your level 6 pets, we end up getting most of the wine or grape juice you can use daily from those, or more so. So at that point, or even before, if you don't have the level 6 pets, what's a better trade-off, your grape juice or your wine to make with those grapes?
So it really depends on if you're looking for XP or for silver. So just on raw silver, you want to go for the wine. It takes longer, but 90 million a day or 91 million if you go for the cool elite strats. That is the single largest amount of silver from any single subsystem in the game. So it's really hard to beat wine on pure silver, but that gives no XP. I think we're going to have another section later in the podcast or in another episode on power leveling. But as a preview, grape juice, real useful for power leveling your farming, basically required. So depends on what your goal is at the exact current moment. One more fun, if a little bit degenerate strategy that has been gaining some popularity with wine. So there's a perk. It's not a farm supply perk. It's one of the actual perk point perks that gives you a 3% chance every time you put a new bottle into the wine cellar of it skipping up to 20 days instead of starting it, 1 day like time works. So that raises your average earnings rate on its own a tiny bit. It's usually not even worth calculating in because it's 3% chance. It doesn't really matter all that much. But what some people have been doing, if they have extra wine, is they put a bottle in, and as long as they've got another bottle to replace it, if it doesn't hit that 3%, they'll sell it immediately at 1,000 and put another one in and just hope to get the 3% hit before they let it age. Now, I don't necessarily recommend that to early players, mostly because we have all of these new quests coming into the game that require large amounts of wine, and this strategy will use a lot of that up. But if you've got extra wine and you really want a little bit more silver, it is an option.
Yeah, that's a fun way to do it. I know I think I did a video showing that method. Something I've seen recently, though, we just had added the option for bulk storing wine and selling. And so I have seen several staff players that may or may not have done this completely clear out their wine cellar just to get everything down to only one click to deal with.
It is a much needed quality of life improvement, much less clicking store wine several hundred times.
Right. And then you only have to do it once every 31 days or 32 days, depending on when you're selling, if they're all on the same timeline.
You take an average hit for a couple of weeks, and then once you sort of get everything back online, you're in a much better place.
But then you're in a quandary when you have the bottles that do hit the bottle warmer perk. Do I sell those and start over to try to get back to zero? What's more important, the money or trying to keep everything on the same timeline?
That is always the quandary. I don't generally bother keeping mine synchronized. I just sort of let it go, and when I sell, I sell. But would create a problem.
Yeah, micromanaging has its benefits to min-maxing, whereas if you're going for the laziest method possible, it's not going to be optimal.
But that's okay. It's because it's an exponential curve, really only the last couple days really matter for profits. So, if you sell stuff before then, you can just sort of call it a do-over.
So if you've hit the point then where your pets are bringing more than you need daily grape juice and wine, with your grapes, what are you working on mastering first, grape juice or wine?
That's a good question. I mean, most people tend to go for the easier mastery first so they can get it more quickly, and that would be wine. Wine is 100 grapes and grape juice is 200 grapes.
All right, awesome answer. I didn't even think of that. I just make wine because I'm lazy. I pulled grape juice out of my list. I don't even see it to craft right now.
Yeah, same. Especially with needing so much for quests, that's where all my extra goes.
All right. Any last words on Vineyard and Wine before we wrap this up?
I think that just about covers it. Just as always, try and have fun with it.
Awesome. Thanks again, coderanger, for hopping on this mechanics deep dive and giving us all the inside scoop on vineyards and wine.
Thanks for having me.
It is time for another staff spotlight. Once again, I am not being left unsupervised. We have Auggie here with me today to help conduct the staff spotlight interview.
Technically today you're double supervised, but I concur.
This is true. And for our staff spotlight today, we have NoVelcroShoes.
Hello, Farm RPG. NoVelcroShoes here, sitting in my lounge room in Canberra, Australia. There you go.
We are so glad to have you here. We're going to start off just jumping right into the questions. And that is, how did you learn about Farm RPG and how long have you been playing?
Yeah, so I learned about it from a Reddit post. I haven't been a long-term Reddit user, and I was just searching through there because I quit one of my previous computer games that I play. Mm-hmm. And I was looking for the next one, and I tend to play one at a time now. So I was in Reddit for some reason, and it popped up, and I thought, I'll have a look, and here I am, all these months later. I can't remember exactly when I started. It was July 8th, 2021.
And now you work here.
Yeah. And then somewhere along the line, like all computer games I tend to do, I play them a bit aggressively and hard and like to a little bit min-max stuff and try and progress as fast as I can and work stuff out and read guides and chat to people and do stuff. And before you know it, I ended up on the staff.
Well, so since you've been staff and you've seen all sides of it, in one sentence, how would you describe Farm RPG?
This is, I saw this question, I thought, that's tough. One sentence. So I'll give it a go.
You should have heard my answer.
Yeah, look, I haven't even really thought about it to work out what I'd say. So I'm going in this kind of cold. So Farm RPG, it's an epic, idle, text-based game that is in no way idle, but it is text-based, where you build your farm from literally nothing into this empire of farming and fishing and exploring and raptors and ancient coins and all these other wonderful things that evolve over time. Full stop.
There we go.
That is a long but good sentence.
I was going to just keep adding commas, but I had to stop somewhere.
I didn't when I did my staff spotlight.
I feel like if we took these answers and threw them into Grammarly, we'd probably get some pretty low scores for a single sentence. Be like, nope, make that 5 or 6.
I liked the part where you said an idle game that's text-based, but it's not really idle, but it is really text-based.
Yeah, like I actually was searching for an idle type game. You know, I like games that are on mobiles because I have a mobile and an iPad at work, and I like games that I can jump into, jump out of, jump into. And this one caught my eye initially, and now it's one of those games where you can literally, if you get a little bit too hooked, play every minute of the day. So I do have to ration myself sometimes.
Yeah, I felt that. I think what's really part of what's kept me around is the ad-free aspect of it. Like, there's just no ads.
Yeah, completely. I always start these type of computer games as a free-to-play player in every gaming aspect that I play. But I often, if I then stick around at a game, like to trickle in a little bit of cash, you know, the starter packs and this and that. And the fact that there were no ads and that the premium currency was readily enough available all those months ago and still is, was a big plus for me, and it got my interest and kept it. And then, unfortunately, once you've got my interest, I then tend to stick around for a while.
When you get hooked, it's that deep, huh?
Yeah, it's the game just gets bigger and bigger, and Firestream is just a machine as far as development and coding. It's the other thing that brought me to this game was in those first couple of weeks, I saw him a number of times in Global talking to people. At first I'm like, who's this guy talking in chat? And then I realized he's the developer. And I'm like, wow, that's actually pretty cool. There's not a lot of games like that out there. So that instantly had me intrigued.
I'm convinced that Firestream is like 5 people in a trench coat because of just how much stuff he is doing all the time.
A little lab of coders, bunkered away, writing code to keep the juggernaut rolling.
All right. Well, the next question that I'm sure everybody would love to know is, where did your Farm RPG username of NoVelcroShoes come from?
This is interesting. Like, I'm a middle-aged man, unlike the thousands of younger people that will probably play and listen to this. And I've been playing computer games now for about 40 years. And at some point, probably 30 or 40 years ago, I had an experience where, in real life, where I was wearing Velcro shoes in public. And it wasn't an overly pleasant experience, as you can appreciate, a teen wearing Velcro shoes with a group of teens that think they're a little bit weird. And I from that day, one of my gaming tags became NoVelcroShoes, and it eventually became my primary gaming tag, and I've used it in a whole heap of games over the last 20 to 30 years, actually.
That's awesome.
That one fateful day.
That one fateful day. And I'm not going to go into the very specifics about the day, but it's burnt in my mind. And as much as I can smile about it now, there are many years that I didn't smile about that day.
Well, I'm glad that you can give it a chuckle now.
Yeah. Like I'm middle-aged now, so you chuckle at adversity sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like my worst experience with Velcro is like when like a string gets caught in it or something and you just can't get it out. But that's about it for me.
Velcro is a wonderful substance when used for the good of mankind, but it can also be, an evil substance. I've experienced both.
If it's on shoes, apparently.
Velcro has affected you deeply.
Yeah.
But I mean, well, do you guys have like command strips down there? Is that a thing?
We may have it, but it may be a different name. So I'm not sure what a command strip is.
So basically, it's like a piece of Velcro you slap on the wall, and then another piece of Velcro is attached to like a hook or something, and you just put them together.
Yeah, I just Googled it. Yeah, we have those. Yeah, for sure. Readily available at Officeworks. Yeah, for sure.
Officeworks, the staples of Australia.
Yeah. If you want your office supplies, you got to go to Officeworks.
We actually have Office Depot here in Houston too, which is new to me, but
yeah.
Back to being on topic. Besides Farm RPG, what games do you like to play, if any?
So at the moment, I only play 2 games. Farm RPG is the one that I tend to play one game at a time now. I used to play many games on many platforms, but now I play one game at a time. Farm RPG is basically it. But somewhere along the line, while I was playing Farm RPG, some of the other staff mentioned a true idle game called Lost Vault. I jumped into that. So I play both Lost Vault and Farm RPG at the moment, and that is it. Before that, I came from a series of kind of games. Probably the biggest one recently was a game called Dominations. It's made by Nexon Games. It's a massive iPad type game where you build a base and go to war against other people and whatnot. So that was my last computer game before this one. And then there was a whole heap of other ones. I played Diablo 2 for a while back in the day. Played this thing called Tribal Wars. Played a few things on PlayStation and Switch. Just the common kind of hack and slash type things and idle games like Animal Crossings. Yeah, just lots of different genres, really.
So you play everything?
Yeah, but now I only play one thing at a time. I don't have the...
You played everything?
Yeah, I've played most things, yeah. Look, I started in the days of kind of old Atari Pong consoles and Commodore 64 computers. I had an Apple II classic mono green screen computer. So I played lots of old games, some old classics, Wonder Boy, Karateka, Donkey Kong, the original Tetris. Yeah, I've played pretty much most big computer games since then.
That was my childhood as well. We talked to some guests, and Auggie and them are going off about all these games that have been the last 10 years. Like, they're so old. I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
That's still new.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just some of the original arcade games where you're actually at an arcade console. I used to get 20-cent pieces from my parents and, walk down the street and put the 20-cent pieces in these console games and play for hours. And in one of the towns, I was actually called Wonder Boy because I was the only kid in town that had finished the Wonder Boy game, little things like that.
Very cool.
That's pretty cool. They still have those arcades.
Yeah.
There's actually one pretty close by to me. And the cool thing is they call them like barcades. Not all of them are, but enough of them are where it's like a bar arcade.
Yeah, nice.
And it's just it's a very cool combination.
Yeah, I think there's a couple in the town that I live in. One which does all the retro games, and it's the more popular one. You know, they've got the big things, and you just walk in there and you can play them. They're not 20 cents anymore, but you know, you can get your beer, you know, get some peanuts, and then you can go over and play these games. It's pretty cool.
I feel like when I go to an arcade, the only game I'm interested in is pinball. Because that's the only one that I am good at.
Oh, pinball wizard.
But I'm not even that good at pinball. But it's the only one that I don't immediately lose on.
There was a few games I could play for, those arcade games I could play for well over half an hour to an hour just with one kind of 20-cent piece. It was fun.
Well, moving on to the next question for NoVelcroShoes. What's one thing you wish the farm RPG community knew?
Wish they knew. I suppose, you know, as staff, we always have to refer back to the library. A lot of work goes into the library. Maybe you can read the library. The library is probably up there. But there's also
it exists.
Yeah, that it exists and that it has information in it that's updated in real time almost. As Firestream just randomly drops things on the public and staff at the same time, that there are library teams scrambling to write documents. And if you see a new feature, you don't have to post straight away, you know, where is the library file for this? It's coming, we promise. But the other cool thing that I've found about Farm RPG is that these other little communities. The Discord community is pretty cool. The Reddit community, they're both getting up there and growing. And now this podcast, I think those little communities around the fringes of Farm RPG are also very cool.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's crazy how many people like I've become friends with, and we like the majority of stuff we talk about is Farm RPG because there's always stuff to talk about. But then we can also talk about other stuff. Like you really can make friends here. Yeah.
Look, it's an amazing game because of the community. That little chat box in the game completely changes the dynamic of the game. And there are obviously thousands of people that play that don't use the chat box because I think in like if you're on an iPhone, it doesn't appear automatically unless you're in a certain landscape. But if you actually do look at it and then start reading it and every now and then typing it, you get drawn into the community. And as far as a gaming community, it's amazingly social and helpful and overall heading in the right path. There's always the odd outburst that evil mods have to jump on. But at the end of the day, it's a really clever aspect of the game that really draws everybody in on a common path.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because you're not really competing with anybody, so nothing that you say, you know, you have no reason to impede anybody. Everybody just kind of wants to help everybody. The only thing I ever compete with is like item mastery with like a couple of my friends that do item mastery.
Yeah, the interesting thing for me about leaderboards and competing, like I didn't know how I'd go without a leaderboard when I started the game. I often try and get to the top of leaderboards. But I actually love the way it is. But to me, it's slightly strange. Like there is competition in this game, but it's not aggressive, crazy leaderboard competition. Like there are people that chase masteries. There are people that chase silver. There are people that want to hoard everything and get up to certain numbers. You know, there are people that, you know, want to just farm or just fish or do whatever. They want to be the best at one little aspect of the game. You know, they want to be the first person to get an achievement or they want to be the first person to a $10 billion row. There's these little competitions happening all around, but at the same time, there's no leaderboard for you really to go aggressively. And the thing that happens with no leaderboard is then you don't get the cheaters trying to hack their way to the top of the leaderboard, which is very cool.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it also takes away a lot of that stress of like, it takes like a weight off your shoulders. Like for someone like me, I'm not generally very competitive with most things. Like I don't care if I'm the best, whatever, but it is still nice to see, you know, if there was a leaderboard, I'd be bummed out if I was always mid-range.
Yeah.
And I would feel pressured to work more on something I didn't enjoy rather than working on the things I do enjoy, where we can have our own private little, you know, competitions, if you even want to call it that. We just kind of compare numbers sometimes.
You say that was a huge emphasis for Firestream when we kind of spun off Farm RPG from Titan Conquest, because Titan Conquest is competitive and there's leaderboards for everything and people compete like crazy. And it does sometimes bring out that cheater side of thing. And so one of his main goals was this needs to be a chill, relaxed game, no leaderboards. And part of that made it so we had a very lax code of conduct when the game first launched, and then things have had to be added as inevitably people try to do things and play the game in ways that they really shouldn't. So we had to explicitly say, you know, don't do that.
Don't cheat. Be nice.
Yep.
Yeah, don't cheat. It's a simple rule. Don't cheat. But yeah, look, the leaderboard thing for me, I have at times been too addicted to gaming and have had to take breaks and things in previous games and walk away at times when, you know, I realised it's impacting other aspects of my life. Computer gaming addiction is a real thing, and if you're struggling with it, you need to get work out balance in your life, and that can be hard sometimes. But the no leaderboard thing is nice because there would be times where I would wake up in the night to start a queue, you know, or to make sure something's still continuing on. And the no leaderboard thing in Farm RPG has meant that I just don't do that at all. Like, I'm not waking up to make sure that I produce the next lot of fancy pipes. It's I just go to bed, and if I wake up and my inventory's full, it's full. And then I, you know, with the way crafting's gone, I now just hit one button and got 1,000 fancy pipes.
A lot of fancy pipes.
We may be checking those crops at 3 a.m. though, as the meme depicted.
Look, if there were leaderboards, I probably would. But now I just plant broccoli at 9 o'clock at night, and I wake up and the broccoli's done.
There you go.
See, what happens to me is I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm mad because I fell asleep with mushrooms planted 6 hours ago.
Or you're mad because you've still got 2 hours left of the broccoli and you can't start the next thing. It's like, oh no.
And then at that point, I'm not going to waste a grape juice because it's already been so long.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying because I'm sure most of us have been there. Yeah.
All right. So we are at the probable last question, which is, tell us an interesting fact about yourself.
Oh, I'll tell you about myself, and whether or not people find it interesting or not, you know, that's up to them. It seems very normal to me, but, you know, other people find things interesting that are otherwise normal to other people. I'm actually a doctor here in Australia. I work as an anesthesiologist for American people, or as an anaesthetist if you're in Australia. Which is an interesting job and I love. I got 2 kids and a wife. I got a dog. We've got hermit crabs, which one of my children look after. I used to be a competitive amateur runner, and I ran just on 17 minutes for 3 miles, which isn't too bad when you're in your 40s. And that's it. Long-term gamer. That's about it.
Wait, so did you say miles? Did you convert that already? Or does Australia also use?
Yeah, so our standard race here in Australia is 5K, and obviously the 5K is an Olympic event and everything as well. But 5K is 3.2 miles. So, you know, there are lots of kind of 3-mile events in the States because it's very close to 5 kilometres, which is, you know, considered an international race distance. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I can't convert any of that stuff without just looking it up.
Yeah,
I'm horrible at it.
Because I've been gaming so long, a lot of the games that I'm playing are American based, and just talking to. I'm also involved in a power meter for running, which is very similar to a power meter for cycling. It measures watts per kilo, and instead of looking at pace or heart rate, you actually look at power outage to work out training and racing and whatnot. Anyway, that company's based out of Boulder, so talking to the users of that device, most of them Americans, so they all talk about how fast they run in miles per minute and how many miles they run. So yeah, I've had to very quickly be able to convert most of the things in my head to be able to hold decent conversations with them.
I guess I have like a follow-up question to that. Like, what is, like, while playing Farm RPG, what is like the word or phrase that you've had to learn what it meant because you just like it's not something you would have heard, if there is one?
Probably the that most recent pet, and I don't even know how to say it properly because I just know it's that funny looking pet that people are writing memes about now, and people are, it was got all the hype, and then it came in. What is it?
Excuse me?
The capybara. I had never heard of this animal before Farm RPG. Never.
I thought that do they not live in Australia?
No, it's South American.
No. No.
I knew it was somewhere south of here.
So you got to fly not only south but east or west to get to Australia. It's a long way. When I first came to America in the 90s, I spent a number of weeks just touring the west coast of America, driving around in a hire car and staying at random dodgy locations, and obviously went out to bars at night to meet the local people. The overall geography of the country Westerners was bad. They didn't know where Australia was at all. It was pretty bad.
The true American experience.
We're a long way away, over 10,000, kilometres, maybe even 10,000 miles. And it takes a plane to get here because we're an island, but a very big island, the biggest island in the world, I suppose.
Okay, flex.
Yeah. The only island that's a continent as well. Yay.
Yay.
All right. Well, there we go.
I'm still stuck on never heard of the capybara.
No, never heard of the capybara. And then everyone started talking about capybaras, and then memes were happening, and then it's like, library pages, and I'm like, and then it came like this awesome expensive pet that gives me grab bag 7 so I don't have to manually fish. So I named it after Firestream. Hi, Firestream.
Hi, Firestream.
All right. Well, thank you so much, NoVelcroShoes, for hopping on and letting us talk to you and be featured in our staff spotlight.
No worries. Thank you both, Auggie and Bhelogan. It's been a pleasure. Unexpected. I was going to do this much later and let everyone else go first, but here I am.
Here you are.
Here you are.
It is time for another player spotlight here on the Farm RPG podcast. I am your host, Bhelogan, and we've got a special guest today who has only been playing the game for a few days, but instantly jumped into the community and reached out and wanted to be on the podcast. So welcome, sLinGeR.
Thank you, sir.
Glad to have you. I'm excited to get your perspective on Farm RPG, being probably the newest player that we've interviewed by far.
That's cool. Good work.
Let me start off by asking you, how did you initially learn about Farm RPG?
Actually, I scroll through the App Store at times on my iPhone, and I look for different RPGs to play. I have a lot of time on my hands because I'm retired. I don't work, so I use these games as a stress relief and stuff like that. And I came across it, and I love farming games. But it's a very, very good game. I really like it a lot.
So obviously we've had you on for a couple of days. What so far has kind of drawn you to the game and gotten you hooked on it?
Well, the game is great by itself, but the community is also great because I've had a lot of people reach out to me, a lot of people giving me gifts and stuff, and help out. So that was probably the most catchiest thing I would say is the community.
Yeah, we work really hard to make sure it's friendly and inviting, and that could be a challenge when you've got an open game that pretty much anyone can jump on. And
Sure, understand.
We have special characters, I like to call them sometimes.
I understand. I've met a few already.
All right. Now, you told me you hadn't listened to the podcast. So this next question, we've had some people do really well on and some people struggle. But if you had one sentence and one sentence only, how would you describe Farm RPG?
Okay. I would say in my world, it's a life-saving game. Every day is a struggle for me to get through each day. And having a game like this with a wonderful community keeps me hopeful for the next day.
That's awesome. I love hearing that, especially kind of the looking forward to what's coming up the next day and things to do.
Sure.
Maybe I could ask you to expand on that a little bit. What's kind of where you're at early in the game? What's your next goal? What are you working on?
Just grinding away and leveling it up and enjoying the growing and the different parts of the game and, buying different things and just having fun. It's just a very, very well-built game and I appreciate it. And I really enjoy it. I'm on it quite a bit.
What's the next thing that you're working towards in Farm RPG?
Probably just leveling up so I can start giving some major gifts to other people because they've given me some pretty nice gifts. So I'd like to do the same back.
That's cool. We do have that pay it forward mentality for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we talked about it briefly before the recording, but where did the name sLinGeR come from?
sLinGeR is from the slingshotforum.com. I'm a professional shooter on there. I do competitions. I build my own slingshots and, do all my own band sets and everything like that. I'm an instinctive shooter, so I don't aim. I'm pretty good at what I do. I love slingshots. It's a very big stress relief for me. Mm-hmm. And it stuck with me. It's just single shot slinger and everybody knows me. I've been on there for about 10 years.
Slingshots are pretty cool. If you're new to it, what would be a way that you would start getting into that hobby?
Make yourself a slingshot and then give it to someone else because when you give someone a slingshot, they become addicted and they learn how stress relieving it could be. So I always make slingshots and give it to kids and other people as much as I can.
Are there like pre-made kits that you buy for those or do you just look up instructions and do them from scratch?
No, I just make them. I hand carve them. I could use trees to do it, or I can make it out of different boards and different laminates, different G10 materials, like for knife materials. Mm-hmm. Currently, I have over probably 200 slingshots from gifts from all around the world.
Oh, wow.
And they range from anywhere from $1,000 to $1, but they were all gifts from friends. Some have passed and some have moved on, but mm-hmm. It's a very, very exciting sport.
At some point, I'd love to see some of those and see what they look like.
I could show you some pretty fancy ones. I think you'd be blown away.
All right. We'll look forward to that. You got my mailbox, so you can ping me when you've got some photos or something. No, we don't. It won't allow you to post links in game, but we'll figure it out.
Okay, no problem.
So you had mentioned that you were looking for RPG type games. What other games besides Farm RPG do you like to play?
I like different survival games. One of my other favorite games is it's over in Russia. It's a survival type game. I'm drawing a blank right now. I can't think too good right now with different things, but I love, RPGs, Soccer Stars. That's a great game. It's not an RPG, but it's one of my favorites and I like playing it. Mm-hmm. But just in general, I like crafting, building, and day art survival. That's the name of the game. That's very similar to the game that we're playing here. It's just not about farming, but it's very similar when it comes to trading, gifting, crafting and stuff like that. That's probably my second favorite game.
All right, cool. Not ones I'm familiar with, but that seems to be the case with most people I ask. What games do you like? And we have such a wide variety and backgrounds that people come from.
I'm sure.
They're all over the place. All right. Well, I know you're relatively new to the Farm RPG community, but if there's one thing you wish that they knew, what would that be?
Well, I guess if you're asking me like a personal question, I would want everyone to know that the game is very good for stress relief. Like I said, I've been using it every day for stress relief and it works very well because, some of our wounds are unseen. Mm-hmm. I just think that it's like I said, the community is great.
All right. Well, the last question from our standard questionnaire is tell us an interesting fact about yourself.
Okay. Well, I did 3 tours in Iraq back in 2003 with the Marines. And I've been retired since I'm 22 years old. I'm a disabled veteran. Like I said, I use these games, specifically this game at the time, for stress relief to get me through the next day because some days are kind of dark. I just lost my service dog from cancer of 8 years. She was trained for me as a gift. And my son's name is Semper from the Marine Corps.
Very fitting. Very fitting.
He's 13 years old.
That's cool. We have a lot of parents, both in game on staff. I know we're about the age. My youngest, we've interviewed on the podcast. He goes by Dead Bushy. He's 17. He's our baby at this point.
Nice.
So we're at the point where like we've only got a few more years, and then it's just me and the wife at that point. But
yeah, nothing like having your own kids. So it's an amazing feeling.
it is. Sometimes you love them, sometimes you want to strangle them, but
yeah, sometimes you have to do both.
That's very true.
Yeah, I'm sure he's a good boy.
All right. Well, thank you so much for reaching out to me, taking some time to answer our interview questions and letting the Farm RPG community get to know you better.
I appreciate that. Thank you.